All right. Hello. How's it going? I am just getting started here. This is the Daily Faded. I'm Hetz. That's my name, guys. So I have a real treat for you tonight. A very special day, which is it's old cartridge testing day. So I've got two green cracks. You see there where it says GC? That means green crack. This is a long-standing favorite sativa of mine. And right now I'm just about getting every last hit off of what I've got left. And as I thought, that one is a completely dead soldier. So one green crack down the drain. About that and a whole lot more tonight. As I am testing my now I already finished and finished all the way my Pineapple Express that I most recently purchased. This is, I believe, Northern Lights, which if there's any left to this Northern Lights, that's an accomplishment. Well, that didn't seem like much. I tasted something, but I didn't feel much smoke coming out there. I thought that I got some. Oh, I got some smoke there. There's something left to this one. Maybe we can get started with Northern Lights. I think of all the strains I've smoked in the last several months, Northern Lights is my favorite. It's just a really groovy indica. I don't know. I think it might be a hybrid. I'm not sure because it gives you some groovy head games while giving you that nice relaxing body high. Hello, 3 minutes into this live stream and we haven't really talked about politics yet. So I'm going to start off 157,810 cases, up over 3%. 176,464 reported deaths, up over 3.5%. In the US, we have 830,544 cases, which is up over 3%. And we are now up to 45,296 deaths. The increases are, but we're currently at 35,465 cases, 1,282 deaths. California also has only 3 COVID deaths per 100,000 residents, one of the lowest numbers for any state in the country. By comparison, New York is at 98 deaths per 100,000, New Jersey 54 deaths per 100,000, Massachusetts 28 deaths per 100,000, Michigan 27, Louisiana 30, and so on. So, despite more White House propaganda today, we still had, I think that was a record death toll today, again. If not, it was close. And cases are still increasing. And they're increasing by more each day. A little less of an increase than before. But all this talk of reopening the country is really silly, to tell you the truth. It's a national delusion of some sort. I'm going to start off with the daily fail today. We'll get progressively angrier as we move on through the various subjects that I've written down some notes about today. So the CDC announced that, let me see if there's anything to this. I'd like to see Stuart Varney take a hit in the middle of a story like that. Nobody at Fox Business can do this the way I do it. I should get a show on Fox Business immediately. Immediately. So, the CDC is hiring 650 new contact tracers. to augment their existing 600 contact tracers, which brings them to a total of 1,250 contact tracers. So CDC bringing your number up to 1,250 is a fail. The lowest number I've seen for how many contact tracers we need to really reopen this country is 100,000. That's a lot of people. But when one person can infect 10, you have a lot of contact tracing to do. So it's just another bar by which this administration is failing to do what it needs to do. They keep talking about contact tracing, but they don't have the personnel and officials doing contact tracing. So it isn't only 1,200 contact tracers for the entire country, but it's certainly nowhere near enough. That number from Tom Frieden, the former CDC director, for 300,000 was 300,000 new contact tracers. I want to give a shout out to my man Ben Dixon once again for an excellent episode of his podcast today. He had quite the rant against Brian Kemp. Ben Dixon is located in Atlanta, Georgia, and Brian Kemp is opening a bunch of businesses on Friday. He's opening nail salons, tattoo places, bowling alleys, a whole variety of rando businesses are being opened in Georgia on Friday. And I think there's going to be a direct line between that and an increase in cases and a corresponding increase in deaths. When Brian Kemp was asked, if they figured into reopening that there would be more cases and more deaths, he said yes. So he is willingly going to kill people in Georgia. People will die because they're opening these businesses in Georgia. So people will go out to them and they won't socially distance, and more people will contract the disease. And, God help Georgia. I mean, human life is disposable. Human life is a disposal. There isn't much left in this Northern Lights. So I'm going to put that one aside and see if there's anything left to the Granddaddy Purple. That's from a while ago. According to the World Food Program, the number facing acute hunger in the world could double. This is a result of COVID-19, but let's also remember that annual droughts and floods are causing food and hunger issues for vulnerable populations, especially in Africa, as a result of climate change. This is only going to make those food shortages worse. We must do something at home about poverty, but we also must do something about global poverty. The neoliberal vulnerable countries and buy up all the public assets and privatize everything and load these little countries up with debt that they can't possibly afford to pay off, and then lean on them harder and harder as they have trouble paying for that debt. And, capitalism is not the great machine for lifting people out of poverty that you have been told it is. The greatest example of people being lifted out of poverty, and that's what I say that because people always say, well, capitalism's lifted more people out of poverty than anything else. First of all, you'd have to ask how many people died as a result of capitalism unnecessarily, because all of our wars have been capitalist endeavors. But they always say this thing about how capitalism lifts more people out of poverty. From 1981 to the present day, 850 people. Someone's calling me right now. Sorry, call declined. Sorry about that. There's some smoke left in this one. Granddaddy Purple. Nice mellow. From 1981 to the present, 850 million people. And it's actually between 1981 planned economy where the government has a major stake in all of the major industries. People like to say, oh, well, China's gone capitalist, and that's just not true. It's still run by the Chinese Communist Party, and business in China is still, at the pleasure of the Communist Party. So now I'm not arguing in favor of anything like the totalitarian communist government. Obviously, I have no use for their authoritarianism. And given that prisoners of the war on drugs are political prisoners, we have more political prisoners probably than China. In any case, it was communism that lifted more people out of poverty. And in fact, if you look at the number of people lifted out of poverty by the Soviet Union and China during the 20th century, it by far dwarfs the amount of people lifted out of poverty in other places by capitalism. Absolutely dwarfs them. Michigan, Ohio, Wisconsin. We are going to get to Trump, I promise, or I threaten you. Michigan, Ohio, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Illinois, Indiana, and Kentucky are working together on a plan to reopen these regional operations being put together by the likes of Gavin Newsom or Gretchen Whitmer or Andrew Cuomo are just another response to the inadequacy of the government response. Broken record every night, same old, same old. The federal government is not doing what it should. It's not doing what it can. And it's not planning things carefully. So these regional groups are coming together to protect themselves from the randomness of what the White House is proposing doing. Just another example of governors taking control of what Trump can't or won't or both do. And, for better or for worse, good for the governors. Article in the New York Times about a USC research test conducted in Los Angeles, in LA County. Researchers conducted tests at drive-through sites and at participants' homes and estimated that 2.8% to 5.6% of the county's adult population carried antibodies to the coronavirus. There are 10.4 million people in Los Angeles County. If accurate, that would mean that 220,000 to 442,000 residents. Look, there are asymptomatic people out there in huge numbers, and there probably are still asymptomatic people out there in huge numbers. The virus didn't just die off while people were all socially distancing and staying at home. A less increase, but I think today's increase was bigger than yesterday's, so but we have no idea who's asymptomatic with the virus. We have no idea how many people might still be communicable. Luckily, we're in California and we're not talking about reopening. I mean, they're starting to talk about reopen, but we're not actually saying we're going to reopen X, Y, or Z business on any particular day at any particular time. We're a long way from that in California, even if today is the 21st and it's almost May. Boy, April has just flown by. I obviously am kidding. I can't help but make notes. So Trump in no particular order. Bragged about the low mortality rate as if we didn't have far more deaths than any other country. I think it's ridiculous to brag that our mortality rate is so low when our death toll is so high. He bragged about the Senate bill. We'll get into that Senate bill later. Mnuchin and Trump said they're going to ask companies to pay back their Paycheck Protection Program checks that they got, who weren't technically qualified. Shake Shack has already given back their check. Ruth Chris's Steakhouse, people are saying, does not deserve their check. Obviously, these are big businesses, not more than 500 employees. And Harvard, when they have a huge endowment, Harvard getting a check under this program is not good. But of course, the program has very little oversight. And Steve Mnuchin was like, "Well, I'm going to assume that it was a mistake." Really? I'm going to give everyone the benefit of it. Did you ever play a game called Munchkin? I kind of imagine like a game like Munchkin, only it's called Mnuchin, and it's like Mnuchin and all of the puppets in the White House. That probably didn't make any sense to anyone, but if you ever get a chance, try the game Munchkin. For some reason, Brett Baer was in the White House press room, pretending to be a reporter, I guess. I don't know. Propaganda about immigration. Propaganda about ventilators. Supposedly going to help New York State increase its testing, per his meeting with Andrew Cuomo today. We'll see. Propaganda about beds in Navy ships. He likes to talk about stuff that's already been done over and over and over again to try and drill it into people's heads that he's done a lot, when in fact he has not done anywhere near enough. The federal government has done a lot, but a lot of it is stuff that it was built to do and designed to do anyway. For the Army Corps of Engineers to go out and build emergency hospitals, that's something they've done before. They've done it in previous pandemics. It's something they're built to do. It didn't really take Trump any. There was no loss of political capital. There was no expenditure of political capital. It was nothing to have the Army Corps of Engineers build those hospitals around the country. It was good that they did it. Thank you, Army Corps of Engineer. We're all grateful. But he said he saw the light at the end of the tunnel, so I hope that makes you all feel better. All right, I'm getting tired of having to take in massive inhalations, so this experiment is not working. It's not working because I don't want you to have to put up with it. Now I'm going to do something I shouldn't do, which is smoke green crack at night. This is my second green crack cartridge that I have. But you know what? I'm not very stoned right now. So it's all these half puffs that I've been taking. Really got to work on this. If I have to smoke every night to figure it out, I will. Green crack. I love it. I smoked it a lot at Coachella. So, my favorite part of the press briefing, which is a weird thing to say because they are painful to watch. But I think my favorite part was when the guy from the FDA commissioner, I don't remember his name, was asked about the recent study in Virginia that showed patients who took hydroxychloroquine were more likely to die than the control group that didn't take hydroxychloroquine. It's a small study, so it's not a massive, it's not, it doesn't prove anything. It only requires more studies. But the CDC director was like, well, I just advise, or was it Birx? I don't know. One of them was like, well, I just advise doctors to take that into consideration. But he wouldn't actually say that people shouldn't take hydroxychloroquine. And then he deflected to tests to use hydroxychloroquine as a prophylaxis against COVID-19 for like frontline workers and doctors. Given that it's giving people heart attacks, that just doesn't seem like a good idea to me. Here's something that might protect you from COVID-19. We have no evidence that it does. And it might also give you a heart attack. Good luck. These guys, he was going on and on about how sick Kim Jong-un was and how nice he was and what an authentic relationship he has with Kim Jong-un, and how serious it is. I think he showed more empathy for Kim Jong-un than he has shown for a single person who has died of COVID-19. He showed more empathy for Kim Jong-un than he showed for a single person who died of COVID-19, which just goes to show you what a complete and utter jackass Donald Trump is. Oh, great. AOC is live on Instagram. There goes my whole audience. I had like 75 views on last night's live stream. Not so many tonight. Oh, well. Thanks, AOC. I'm actually going to be talking about her in a minute. Yeah, and so Trump went on and on about we've done more testing than anyone else in the world, which may be true, but per capita, we're like 28th, actually higher than 28th if you count some small countries. Quote, it's going to be gone, end quote, speaketh President Donald J. Trump. He lied about building the wall, talked about how much they're getting done on that, and all the journalistic evidence I have seen suggests that is not true. Yeah, it was Birx who said, they asked Birx about reopening businesses in Georgia and how are people going to do things like nail salon and so on and so forth with social distancing. And of course, she didn't have an answer. Her honest answer would have been they shouldn't be reopening yet. But she just was like, well, they need to follow the CDC guidelines. Well, the CDC guidelines are don't congregate in groups. So that would include your nail salon. Oh, and then Trump gives an extended answer on furloughs at Mar-a-Lago and his other properties. I thought he wasn't running the business anymore. Funny thing that he was all over the businesses talking about them today, like he was still very much in charge. Interestingly, Dr. Fauci was not there today. And what do you know? A couple hours after the press conference, the Department of Infectious Diseases and Allergies that Fauci runs, that part of the NIH, I guess it's part of the NIH or part of the CDC, I'm not sure which, released new guidelines stating explicitly there are no proven therapies for COVID-19. Clearly stating don't try hydroxychloroquine unless you want to be part of a research test. So now we'll go back to the beginning. And I'm surprised there's this much of this left in this green crack one. I'm surprised. Protection program, including $60 billion for smaller lenders. That was one of the big wins that the Democrats got. $60 billion in SBA disaster relief funding, which is going to go mostly to farms and agricultural companies. And get this, companies with a national security interest. So it would be, companies that work with a top secret clearance and that kind of a thing. Sounds shady to me. It wouldn't seem to me like a company doing intelligence work for the NSA. Like enough. $25 billion for coronavirus testing, which is good. I can't say whether $25 billion is enough money or not, because I have no idea how much it would cost to get us to the number of tests that we need to be at, which, we need to be doing millions of tests a day. So the bigger question is an execution question. What is the White House going to do with that $25 billion? I haven't seen the language of the bill, so I don't know if the bill lays out how that $25 billion is to be spent on testing. For example, is it testing to be given directly to the states? Does it indicate these things? And then there's $4 billion deposited directly into the Bank of Cyprus with all the Russian oligarch money. From the American Prospect regarding this bill, Ocasio-Cortez will oppose insulting coronavirus response package. Why would she insult it in the first place? Boom, boom. Sorry. This is an article by David Dayen. Quote, Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Democrat from New York, told reporters on Monday that she would vote against an interim deal on coronavirus response funding, saying that it leaves too many important priorities on the table while allowing Republican priorities to move along unimpeded. AOC and the Progressive Caucus, led by Pramila Jayapal and Representative Mark Pocan, are demanding money for states and localities, along with direct payroll support for workers, rent cancellations and broader eviction moratoria, hazard pay, and emergency temporary workplace standards for essential workers. We must have that. We must have it. Postal Service funding. We must have Postal Service funding. Vote by mail guarantees. We must have vote by mail guarantees. And expansions of health coverage for everyone during the pandemic. The big achievement for the Democrats was getting $60 billion for smaller lenders for the SB right now. They're only the demands of the left. I think the enormity of the economic devastation is not clear to people who are working at home, but otherwise not disrupted. The economic devastation is not as clear to someone like that as it is to someone who is jobless and unsure of how they're going to pay their rent, who can't get their unemployment, who didn't receive their $1,200 check, who's completely fucked right now. There are a lot of people in those circumstances, and the Democrats are walking away from them. They're walking away from them. We've had around 25 million people lose their jobs since this pandemic crisis began. Not since the pandemic began, because the pandemic began in January, February, but since the crisis, the manufactured crisis around it. When I say manufactured, I mean, I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean where we're actually doing something that time period. So 25 million people losing their jobs. As much as I want them to, they're not just magically coming back. You're not going to need as many people in the nail salon. You're not going to need as many tattoo artists because fewer people are going to come out to your establishment and bring you business because they're not going to want to fucking get COVID-19. I ain't going anywhere for a long time, to tell you the truth, really seriously. if Democrats don't demand more than what they're currently demanding, if they insist on living in the delusion that they're taking care of people's needs, if they let the Republicans have this bill with only their so-called concessions, we're fucking doomed. This is why I am not a member of the Democratic Party. When it comes to fighting for people or rolling over to Republicans, they always roll over to the Republicans. I'm sorry, they need to play hardball. They need to hold the SBA money hostage. Nancy Pelosi claims to be a happen. How is she a master legislator? Really? Come on. The only thing the Republicans want right now is the SBA money. That's the only thing that they want. The rest of it were concessions as far as the Republicans were concerned. But they need the Republicans may eventually come back to refill the $4.5 trillion CARES Act Part 1 coronavirus. They might, now that they're talking about oil bailouts. If they go ahead and bail out everyone, they're going to need more than $4.5 trillion. Anyway, we'll see. We'll see, my friends. Thank you for tuning in tonight. Please hit the like button and please hit subscribe and check out some of my other videos. And I'm here every night, 11 Eastern, 8 o'clock Pacific, Monday through Thursday. Peace out. Take care of yourself and stay home and stay safe.